Dear friends, English Literature, Introduction to Drama, The Lion and the Jewel by Old Schwenker. Brief questions with answers. Brief questions 201 to 250. Question 201. How does Sadiko console Lekuno when Sidi goes to Barocas Palace? Answer. When Sidi goes to Barocas Palace, Sadiko assures Lekuno that though Sidi is a woman, she can take better care of herself. Question 202. What does Sadiko tell Lekuno to do to pay the bride price? Answer. Sadiko tells him if he takes a farm for a season, one harvest will be enough to pay the bride price for a girl like Sidi. Question 22. What is Lekuno's future plan? Answer. Lekuno wants to modernize the area by abolishing the bride price, building a motor road through the town, and bringing city ways to isolate it illegally. Question 24. Why does Lekuno wants to abolish bride price? Answer. Lekuno wants to abolish bride price so that women can enjoy equal rights. Question 25. How does Lekuno want to connect illegally to the ways of the Western civilization? Answer. He wants to connect the village to the ways of the Western civilization by constructing motor roads in the village of Illuginle. Question 26. Why does Lekuno want to buy saucepans for women? Answer. The women of the village eat their food on clay pots, which are unhygienic. Lekuno will make the people conscious so that they buy saucepans instead of clay pots for women. Question 27. How does Lekuno want to develop the village? Answer. He wants to develop the village so that the chief of the village rides cars instead of horses, or at least bicycles. Question 28. What does Lekuno want to do for lovers? Answer. Cutting down trees of the bush, he plans to plant a modern park for lovers. Question 209. How does Lekuno want to print newspapers? Answer. He wants to print daily newspapers with pictures of seductive girls. Question 210. What is the prevalent pastime of the villagers? Answer. Now their pastime is playing owl and gossiping. Question 211. What is owl? Answer. It is a popular counting game played with seeds on a board with rows of depressions in it. Question 212. What does Lekuno want to do in future instead of their present pastimes? Answer. Instead of their present pastimes, he wants that the villagers will arrange ball, a party of dancing, and through cocktail party, a party at which alcoholic drinks are served. Question 213. What will, according to Lekuno, the villagers take instead of palm wine? Answer. They will reject palm wine and will take tea with milk and sugar. Question 214. How old is Sadiko? Answer. She is nearly 70. Question 215. Who greets Sidi when she enters Barocas' home? Answer. When Sidi enters Barocas' home, there are no servants to greet her. Question 216. Why are there no servants to greet Sidi at Barocas' home? Answer. There are no servants to greet Sidi because that day was the designated day off for the servants. Question 217. What does Baroka lament about Lekuno? Answer. He laments that Lekuno had made his servants form an entity called the Palace Workers' Union. Question 218. What does Sidi find when she enters Baroka's bedroom? Answer. When she enters Baroka's bedroom, she finds him engaged in a kind of wrestling bout for his daily exercise. Question 219. How was the verbal dance between Baroka and the wrestler? Answer. The verbal dance occurs between them, with both of them winning and losing at different points. Question 220. Who wins the wrestling match? Answer. Baroka wins the wrestling match. Question 221. How does Siri taunt Baroka? Answer. Siri taunts him, saying that he has failed to produce any children for the last 2 years. Question 222. How does Baroka seduce Siri? Answer. Baroka defeats the wrestler and Siri is impressed by his strength and virility. In order to entice her, he tells her of his plans of modernizing the village, bringing with printing stamps with her photograph, for postal and legal documentation purposes. Being delighted by his plan, her head falls slowly on his shoulder. Taking the advantage of it, he seduces her. Question 223. How does Siri return to Lekunul and Sadiko after being seduced by Baroka? Answer. After being seduced by Baroka, she returns to Lekunul and Sadiko crying. Question 224. How does Lekunul react when Siri returns crying? Answer. Lekunul is outraged and plans to bring the case to court. Lekunul is overcome with emotion and wishes to die. Question 225. How does Lekunul wish to die? Answer. He prays to heavens to strike his head. I repeat, he prays to heavens to strike him dead. He asks earth to swallow him and requests the lightning to turn him to dust and ashes. Question 226. Why does Lekunul shake off his death wish? Answer. Though he wishes to die, at the next moment he recovers that his wish to die is cowardly. Question 227. How does Lekunul try to bypass the bride price when Siri loses her virginity? Answer. When Siri is seduced by Baroka, Lekunul tells her that she can no longer demand bride price since she is no more a virgin. Question 228. Why does Siri reject Lekunul's offer to marry her in spite of her loss of virginity? Answer. Lekunul offers to marry her in spite of her loss of virginity, but he refuses to pay the bride price. Siri cannot accept his offer because Baroka has taken away her virginity. As Baroka has had sex with her, she cannot take any other man as her husband. Question 229. Why does Siri choose Baroka for her husband instead of Lekunul? Answer. As Baroka has had sex with her, she cannot take any other man as her husband, so she chooses Baroka for her husband instead of Lekunul. Her decision is due to the concept of chastity. Question 230. When does Lekunul think that Siri is going to marry him? Answer. When Siri returns to Lekunul and Sadiko after being seduced by Baroka, Lekunul offers to marry her in spite of her loss of virginity. She rushes off, leaving them. Sadiko tells him that Siri is preparing for a wedding. Lekunul is very happy, thinking that Siri is going to marry him. Question 231. Why does Sadiko steal a coin from Lekunul's pocket? Answer. Sadiko steals a coin from Lekunul's pocket to pay the mummers. Question 232. How do the mummers dance in the Baroka story? Answer. In the Baroka story, Baroka is made a comic figure. It shows how Baroka is respected by his wives in the prime of his life and how he is mocked and teased at the decline of his youth. Question 233. What is Lekunul's reaction to the Baroka's story? Answer. Lekunul enjoys the spectacle and is pleased by the parts where they mock Baroka. Question 234. What does Sadiko do when Siri asks for her blessing? Answer. When Sidi asks for her blessings, Sadiku invokes the fertile gods to bless Sidi with children by Baraka. Question 235. What does Lakunal do when Sidi starts singing and dancing? Answer. When Sidi starts singing and dancing, Lakunal soon gets involved in the dance and forgets Sidi. Question 236. What does Lakunal do when a young girl taunts him? Answer. When a young girl taunts him, he gives chase. Question 237. What is favorite? Answer. Favorite is the youngest wife of the bill. Thank you friends for watching my video.